I always kind of said, there's a lot of people out there that really would be interested in what we do. Like, we kind of have a cool job. Like, sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees, right? And that's when I was like, people would really be interested to see how a case really gets solved. That's when I had the idea of, maybe I should think about this as a book. And then after I had retired, it took me about a 2-year process to write the book. And then I got it all down, and here we are today.
Some experts chase attention, but the smart ones build authority. You're listening to the Authority on Demand podcast, where credibility becomes your competitive advantage. Every week, we're pulling back the curtain on how founders and leaders turn expertise into inbound demand through books that position, media that converse, and strategies that actually move the needle. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authority on Demand. Now, let's turn your authority into leverage. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Authors on Mission podcast, where we talk to experts who've turned their life experience into wisdom worth sharing. My guest today has protected the Vice President of the United States, hunted down murderers across 3 states, pioneered the use of drone technology in crime scene investigations, and now he's teaching us how to think like a homicide detective. Justin Bocock's journey is very significant. He started as an aircraft mechanic in the Air Force, and now 20 years later, he's investigated over 140 homicides. And now here we are again with his book, On Call: Case Files from a Career in Homicide. It's a remarkable book. We have a lot to chat about today. So let's get started. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. That was a great intro.
Hey, real quick before we jump back in, if you're loving what we're doing here, hit that subscribe button and drop us a like. We're bringing you the best authors, the most real conversations, and all the writing wisdom that you didn't know you needed. So stick around, because it only gets better from here. All right, now let's get back to the conversation. First, I gave a bit of an introduction just to see kind of where you're coming from here and your experiences, which very heavily influenced the book itself. So perfect. But of course, before we talk about the book, I mean, I just have to know, how does a Secret Service agent protecting the vice president end up hunting murderers in Arizona? How did that all come to be?
Kind of how I got into law enforcement. It just kind of happened. When I was 19, I joined the Air Force, and I was an aircraft mechanic on large aircraft, C-141B, out of McGuire Air Force Base, New Jersey. And what we did, part of my unit was we transported the limousines for the presidential and vice presidential movements. That's how I found about the Secret Service Uniform Division. So after I got out of the military, it took about 3 years to get into the Secret Service. I moved to Seattle, and I was an aircraft mechanic on United Aircraft for a while. And then 4 o'clock in the morning one day, I got a phone call from the Secret Service, and they said, "You've been accepted, but we need to know a yes or no right now because the academy starts in 2 weeks." So I said yes, and started my Secret Service journey. I was there for about a year and a half. After the training, I was assigned to the Naval Observatory, which is the official residence of the vice president. At that time, it was Vice President Al Gore. And I liked the Secret Service. It was great training. It was kind of boring. I don't do sitting very well. I have a hard time just being still. And that was a lot of protection. Well, one day I was at the White House, and somebody said, "Hey, there's a guy from the Mesa Police Department and they in Arizona, and they said they're hiring." Like, oh. And I originally was from Tucson, Arizona, which is about an hour and a half south of Mesa. So I talked to him, and I ended up applying, and then I ended up getting the job, and I decided to take it. So in 2000, I moved back to Arizona from Washington, D.C., and I started as patrol officer in Mesa Police Department. Then I went to field training officer, and then eventually to detective, where I started out in beer runs. I was a nighttime beer run detective for a couple of months, and then I really found my passion, violent crimes. One night I got a robbery, and I was the only detective on duty, and they're like, this is yours." And I fell in love with violent crimes. And then from there, I went from robbery to serial robberies. And then in 2012, I tested for the homicide unit. I got in. And from there, I finished up my 20-year career in Mesa, dealing with homicides. So kind of like everything, I just sort of fell into it. It wasn't a plan. It just kind of happened.
Wow. Well, I mean, it's a very inspiring journey and very exciting one too. I mean, half the things that you've done and experienced and seen, I don't think many people could even fathom encountering their lives. So that's really cool that you've been able to do all this and also just had a passion behind it all in the meantime, which, says a lot. So it's really awesome. And at one point then, when did you decide, what, I have to start putting this down into a book? Was there like a certain catalyst that, ignited that, inspiration in you to start putting it into a book and spreading the word about your experiences?
I didn't start writing the book until after I had retired in 2021.
Okay.
But I thought about it about a year or two before that. And it was about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. We were in the middle of a crime scene and we were all kind of complaining about, this is, we're tired and we're dealing with this. But I always kind of said, there's a lot of people out there that really would be interested in what we do. Like we kind of have a cool job, but sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees, right? That's when I was like, this would be people would really, I think, be interested to see how a case really gets solved. Um, and that's when I had the idea of, maybe I should think about this as a book. And then after I had retired, it took me a couple of years. It was about a 2-year process to write the book. And then I got it all down, and here we are today.
Well, hey, all right. And 2 years is a pretty good amount of time. I'm guessing there had to have been a little bit of revisions or planning, involved that kind of led to that time span.
Yes, this is the third version.
Oh, the
The
third
first
version.
one, and I did a complete rewrite. I kind of set it aside. I got some advice from other people, from other authors. I'm not an author by trade. I'm a detective, and I got some advice from them. And then I did the third final rewrite, which I was really happy with. It took time, but I wanted to make it right. If I'm going to do it, I'm like, we'll try it. We'll see it. I'm going to give it 100%, and we'll see what happens. So that's how I
And
ended up.
okay, and you're happy with the overall result of all that work, the three rewrites. You found it beneficial to follow that advice.
Yes, yes. The professional advice. My initial, I kind of wrote it. Everybody said we really like the stories, um, but it's written like a police report. It's very like factual. It needs to be more entertaining. And I'm like, well, I kind of wrote it like a police report. That's what I've been writing for 20 years. And I really had to push myself to get more expressive in my writing. And I think that that really helped because I was able to take a factual story and turn it into a good storytelling, I think. And from the feedback I've gotten from other people who have read it is I've asked them, did I portray the emotion? Did I portray this? Did I portray non-bias? And everybody's like, yeah, you really got that. You really got that. So I'm very happy with the final outcome.
Understood. Well, hey, that's some amazing stuff, and it's hard work. I get it, but I think at the end of the day, if you're happy with the results and you put in the time, well, that's what matters. And of course, you're going to get much better feedback when you're actually taking the time to make those changes. I think a lot of authors can learn from that for sure.
Yes.
um, yeah. So. Let's let's chat a little bit then about, the book itself more so. I see you have a copy of the book right there behind you. I was wondering if we could shine a light on the cover a little bit. What was that
Of
design
course.
work that went into it?
Of course.
Yeah, so for everybody who's looking on the video version of this podcast today, we see that it's in black background and just bold red text on call. So was there a certain decision process to be made on that design work, or did it kind of just flow like that? How did it work?
I didn't actually make the cover. My publisher did, and it was a couple of iterations. That one I thought really stuck out because it's just like you said, the bright red on call, which is really wanted to focus on the on call part, and there's a red fingerprint subdued behind it, and then the yellow kind of like crime scene tape. And when I first saw that, I was like, that looks like a true crime book. It looks, mysterious, crime scene tape, and kind of dark. So I felt like that really fit the genre.
Of course, yeah, and I think it definitely like draws the eye too. You don't really want to have anything flashy or lighthearted because it's serious stuff that we're talking about. So I think it's a perfect design and really gives the readers a idea for what they might be in store for. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about these. I mean, how do you decide which 13 cases to talk about in your book out of all of the ones that you've investigated? How do you narrow that down?
It was kind of hard, but at the same time, I always said I picked the more interesting ones. Um, Not that homicides are easy or light, but some homicides are very easy to solve. We've had a homicide and then somebody just shows up on the scene and says, I did it. Can I talk to a detective? I did it. Or goes to the police station, calls 911 on themselves. Or they just remain on scene. The officers, the first responding officers get on scene there and they're still there. So
Wow.
those aren't as interesting. There's still stuff that goes on. There's still investigation that goes on, but it's more paperwork and things along those lines. So the cases that I chose are also cases that required work and also cases that I really learned from. Um, and they're also not all learning in a positive way. There's a couple of cases where I made some mistakes. I made some biased decisions that ended up not working out real well for me, and I learned from it. And I want other people to learn from that as well. There's a one in there where I didn't really search a crime scene. I searched the crime scene 3 times, but didn't look in one area, and that was the one area that I probably should have looked. And also, there's other areas, there's other cases where I talk about things that I did that were outside of the box that completely worked for me. Um, I picked the cases where you could learn something from that were interesting and that can shed a light on the true crime reader or the professional investigator looking for other advice on cases. They can look at this and they can get an idea of how cases are solved and all the work that goes into it. And also sometimes think outside the box and don't make the same mistakes I did.
Okay, well, there's a lot of different goals for that. I think the one that resonated with me is the idea, well, in the very beginning, you mentioned not everything plays out like, a TV show where you do have to investigate. Sometimes it's just laid out in front of you. But I think it's good that you did include the ones that required a little bit more work because, like you said, now people can learn from it. They see what it's really like on the job, but also, it's ones that impacted you and that you grew from. So that's really inspiring to hear. I made note actually of one of them in particular. One of the chapters about Erica, a domestic violence victim. So I'm wondering if you want to talk about that a little bit to our audience to give us a taste about what they could expect from the book and also to, shine a light on that one. Why was that case so important to you?
Erica's case was important because it was a domestic violence case. Um, and we get a lot of domestic violence murders, but this one in particular really stuck with me because a lot of officers and a lot of detectives that had worked the case with me, that helped me out on it, had dealt with the previous cases. And I don't want to give away too much in the book, but basically, Erica was abused continually by her husband. And everybody was trying to help her. There's an entire list of people, her family, her friends, um, the church she went to, her employers, her former employers. Everybody tried to help. They stepped in, they tried to help. She always kind of played it off. Oh, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Um, and then he did end up murdering her. And I always use that case as an example because there's a bunch of learning things on there where we talk about the suspect in the case. There were some Miranda issues, which I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but it came out during the interview. There were some Miranda issues, and I actually talk about Miranda and Miranda rights when they apply, how they actually apply to a suspect, and what happens if they just start talking and you try to stop them and you try to say, "Hey, stop," you know, do you want a
Right.
lawyer? And they just keep talking and they go, "Don't interrupt me. Just let me talk." Like, what do you do? When it happened to me, I didn't know what to do. I was like, I'm just going to let him talk, I guess. So, and that actually, and I explained how that played out in court because that was a legal challenge. So there were legal issues on that as well. And it's also a great case because we had all these facts and evidence. I'd mentioned all the people that had tried to help Erica. But when we went to trial, due to the laws of court, we weren't allowed to bring that up. One of the main reasons is the judge said, if we bring those people in, it's going to make the defendant look guilty. And we can't do that. We have to present the facts to the jury and let them decide from there. So it was a case that was very, very we had a lot going against us. And there's also a whole thing that happens with the medical examiner and the cause of death. I already spoiled enough of it, so I won't spoil that part. But there's a lot of things that went against us, but at the end, it all came together. And you'll see how, and I bring it out from the case from the very beginning of when you get called out all the way until the jury makes their decision in sentencing on every single case. So you get the full range of what happens in that case. In Erica's case, I also presented to, after it was adjudicated, I actually presented that to civilian academies and also to civilian leadership. I would teach classes routinely when I was a police officer to city council, people who were interested in what the police department did. And I did a presentation on that case to let everybody know that domestic violence is real. That if you have a victim or you have a friend or a family member who is dealing with domestic violence, this is something that you can read this and maybe you can portray this to them and maybe Erica can help them.
They know the process, and I think it helps people. Have you gotten a lot of feedback in that way about like maybe positive reception or people who have benefited from reading these stories?
Um, Not that yet. So far, the people that have read it have kind of been police officers or reviewers, and they haven't said, "Oh, that really affected me. I have a friend that has done that." They just say that, "Hey, we really like how the cases have panned out." The book released September 5th, so I'm still getting the feedback on that. So anybody who has feedback on that, if it does help you, I would love to hear that. I would love to hear that.
Yeah, well, hey, I mean, along those lines, then if somebody did want to connect with you and kind of chat about your cases or about anything else that might be they were going through, what's the best link for people to head to get connected?
I have a website. It's Justin Bocock, my name, .com. JustinBocock.com.
Well,
So,
perfect.
and there on the very bottom, there's a contact. You can email me directly, or you can make a comment, and then I'll answer there. I also have a little blog on there where I'll put like kind of little blogs about just some law enforcement things, law enforcement tactics, um, things that happen in investigations. Like, hey, this is what Miranda is. This is what a search warrant is. Just little things like that.
Understood. Well, that's really cool. So, guys, we're going to put the link in the description box of this podcast today so you can go ahead and click over, get connected, and stay in the know. And I think that's really cool that you have the ongoing blog and not only gives people a reason to keep checking in and stay up to date, but it's useful information. So, again, we'll have the link in the description box of the podcast today.
You get them some help.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's really important that you chose that one for that reason in particular, of course. But, also that, you see all these different sides that you don't realize, especially during the investigation. And it's beautiful that you're doing it from start to finish, giving everybody a well-rounded view so they really know what to, look out for and really think about when these kind of things happen. Hopefully nobody actually has to encounter it. But to transition a little bit into the writing stage of the writing process of this, one of your colleagues told you who wants to relive this. So let me ask you that also. Why did you decide to relive this? Why is it worth reliving all these cases to put it into the book, even though it might cause you a little bit of pain or trauma even?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that is one of my, I remember when I brought up the book, one of my more senior detective, a mentor of mine, I remember we were in the break room and we had just done a call out. And so we were working a murder. We were all tired. And I remember him sipping coffee and saying, who would want to relive this?
Mhm.
And I agreed and I don't agree. Um, and that's why I decided to write the book because I really think that people should hear from it. A lot of true crime books are written by supervisors of a case or the prosecutor who presented the case. And those are great points of view. Very few true crime books that's on cases are written by the detectives themselves, like the ones who actually did the interviews, wrote the search warrants, um, had to present the cases to the county attorney, get rejected by the county attorney, have to rework the case. Uh, so I wanted that perspective, and I'm kind of a true crime fan. I read a lot of those books. I've always noticed that it wasn't always a perspective of how I saw the cases. So I felt that it was something that that should be presented in or be interesting to be presented from the actual detective's point of view. Um, and like I said before, where it goes from when you get called at 2 o'clock in the morning and we go through the initial briefing and then the assignments from there, like who's going to do the crime scene, who's going to be the case agent, who's going to interview these people, and then who does the interviews, how the interviews go. We talk about search warrants, how that all comes together, the DNA. So we kind of bring it all together just as if you were the case agent on a homicide and you're working it and seeing it firsthand how it goes through, and not necessarily how it's presented in court because those two are very different perspectives. They're very important perspectives, but they're different. And it wasn't traumatic. I will say it was almost therapeutic for me. It's kind of like at the moment, you don't realize how much pain and suffering is going on because you're so focused on doing your job right, of asking the right questions, doing the interview, and then writing the search warrants, doing a good crime scene investigation, making sure that everything is right. Only afterwards, when I wrote it, did I really start to process kind of myself, like, okay, I now understand the emotional side of this. And I think it actually helped me. It really did.
Right. Well, I think that's great that it really did benefit by going through, and you said you learned a lot from them too. So that's another like factor along with it, kind of thinking about those lessons learned and your experiences in your journey, and here you are now. What's next on the horizon for you then? You have this book out. Any future projects that we can be looking out for or, be excited about?
Yes, I will say I enjoyed the book writing process. I really did. I enjoyed putting it all together and getting it together. And I have some ideas in my head. I have some other cases, and maybe some other, maybe even because also I dealt with officer involved investigations. So I was thinking maybe going into officer involved investigations. So there's some things in the head, nothing pen to paper yet. But yes, I plan on writing more books. I really enjoyed the process.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think you definitely should, especially because you were so passionate about the first one and you were able to, you know, grow and learn from the process. And I think as soon as this people start to pick up this one and it starts to message clicks with them, they're also going to resonate a lot too. So why not? Definitely get down to it.
Well,
I
thank you.
guess we can check on the website then for more updates about when that might be, right?
Yes, correct. I'll keep everybody updated.
Well, perfect. Awesome. So I'm wondering then, do you have any other last bits of advice for the listeners today? Any words of wisdom for the writing process or, what's to come next?
Um, I I think people should really embrace the experience that they have. I always took for granted that I was a homicide detective, and only because when you're in the homicide detective world, those were all my friends. That's who everybody that I talked to, and then you start talking to other people, and they're really like, "Wow, that's really interesting." For me, it's just a job. There's a lot of people out there that have a lot of really good experience, and they think it's just a Tuesday for them. But for everybody else, it's a really exciting thing. So don't downplay the experience that you have. If you don't think you have an exciting job, you probably have an exciting job. And somebody might want to know about that and they might want to learn about that. And not even a job, even just your experiences in life. Again, if you think you're boring, you're probably not. You probably have experiences that people want to hear about and could possibly learn about. So I would always tell people, don't downplay yourself. You know, really reflect on your experiences and your life experiences. And I think a lot of people would really enjoy and benefit from hearing that.
Okay, yeah, no, I definitely resonate with that too. And I think that these are the sorts of things people need to hear and really implement into their writing too. So thank you for sharing that with us. And this has been an overall very interesting and inspiring conversation. You've lived things that other people couldn't even imagine. So thank you for putting it into a book for others to experience and to learn about. It's, very inspiring. It's been a wonderful conversation. Thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and to everybody listening, again, if you want to learn more about this or, dive into Justin's world, learn more about how crimes are actually solved in not the Hollywood version, but the real work that Justin's told us about, pick up On Call, Case Files from a Career in Homicide. It's a guide to critical thinking in addition to crime books, so amazing stuff. And yeah, just thank you for coming on. And to the audience listening today, keep writing, keep questioning your assumptions, and remember that the truth is out there. You have to be willing to look for it. And we'll see you next time on the Authors on Mission podcast. That's a wrap on another episode of the Authority on Demand podcast. If today's conversation sparked something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode with a founder or leader who's ready to stop being the best kept secret in their industry. If you want to turn your expertise into inbound demand, head to authorityondemand.com to see how we help clients go from unknown to in demand. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, and I'll catch you on the next one. Now, go build some authority.